Hour 2 Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, up on TSN 4. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado. Got Daniel Rapaport later in the hour on your boy, Brian Harman. Basically going pillar to post. Had a 5-shot lead after 36 holes. Never looked back. I thought he was going to puke on Saturday. Everyone thought he was going to puke.
Everyone thought. Everyone was watching and waiting for it, especially when one of the big boys started to make a couple birdies. You're like, here we go.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
Didn't happen to his credit. And I guess there were people openly heckling him and effectively putting a hex on him, hoping that he would crumble. And I think that was more, like, I'm not trying to defend idiots, but probably more trying to protect the tournament than it was anti-Harman. And what I mean by that is, well, what I mean by that is, if you want a great tournament, so if a guy's going to take off, that sucks. And I think it was like, we want you to crumble. Even if you win by a stroke, that's more interesting than you running away. And I would guess it was a combination of people not knowing who Brian Harman is. Tommy Fleetwood, a local guy, a beloved player over there, is lurking and right behind him. But it was probably more fans. I can speak from my own experience. Great story. I wanted him to struggle so that we had a golf tournament on Sunday, and he didn't, and we didn't. We had probably the most forgettable Sunday I can think of in modern major history.
Just how he drew it up,
just a
man.
fact.
Like he's a small guy. He's 36 years old. He wins his first major. He doesn't hit the ball very far. What's he hitting, like 280 off the tee? But he's very accurate, and he made putts. All he did was make putts.
He made a lot of putts.
58 out of 59 from inside 10 feet. Like, that's incredibly impressive. And if anything, it should be a great story to show that you don't need to be Rory and you don't need to bomb the ball 350 yards. You just need to play really sound golf. You need to keep the ball in play, which was at a premium all week.
Absolutely.
Because they had the weather. They had the bad weather. They had the weird OB. They had that weird par 3 that people were making a really big deal out of, which ended up being not so bad after. And this guy he putted, man. He rolled the rock with that monstrosity of a putter from like 2016. Like, if you're one of these golf chains, how are you not finding ways to get that thing front and center right at every entrance of your store?
Here's the problem. I still don't think anyone would buy it because it's Brian Harman.
Because it's him.
Yes. Yes, the stats were remarkable. Like you said, 58 of 59 inside 10 feet. That is insane. But it's Harman. Harman. It doesn't matter what kind of putter it is. It doesn't matter if he one-putted every green 72 times. No one's walking into Golf Town saying, give me the Harman.
Let me ask you this.
I got to have Harman's gear. It's not going to happen.
You're a golf guy. Let's say you're a golf nut and you got putters in your house, right? And you've kept them all over the years. You saw that display Brian Harman put on. You're going into that little cave in your house and you're grabbing that putter because you probably owned it because it's a TaylorMade, it's a Spider, and you're bringing it out this weekend.
You might
I guarantee
check it out.
Like, I'm bringing this thing back out because this guy rolled the rock with it.
Possibly, again, if you already own it. Buying it, I don't see it. I don't see the Brian Harman 16 Spider making a return, but I could be wrong on that. He also missed all those pot bunkers, which were just causing havoc.
Crazy.
He never was in the bunker. He just rolled putts and hit fairways and greens. And hey, credit to him. We'll get into it a little bit later this hour. Yeah. We've got Kylie McDaniel of ESPN coming up here in a moment. The Jays, no stop for the Jays. Right back at it and right back into the belly of the beast. They're in L.A. tonight. This would be high on my bucket list, too. We talked about it last hour. If you asked me where would you want to see the Jays play, I would go New York 1, Boston 2, but it's probably 1A, 1B. Right? Yankee Stadium and Fenway are just incredible spots. New York and Boston, you know, the biggest beasts of the AL East and of baseball in general with great history, great cities. Everything about that trip is awesome. Someone wrote in going to see them at Wrigley would be cool, but they have no history against the Cubs. They got a lot of history against the Yankees and a lot of history against the Sox. And we brought that conversation up talking about the amount of fans that got to Seattle. And Seattle is, I think, high on the bucket list right now, in large part because of the amount of Canadians that'll be there, right? It's a road series where you probably feel like you're at home. And I thought it looked and felt really cool. A lot of electricity out there in Seattle. But L.A. would not be far off the list either.
No.
Like L.A., seeing them play at Dodger Stadium would be really, really cool.
Well, and that's part
And
of
it's
it is
LA.
and yes, it's LA, it's the Dodgers, it's also the stadium, right? It's
Yes.
Dodger Stadium. There's a little cachet that goes with that as well. It's just cool, I think, to see your favorite team that you usually see play in a dome here in Toronto, although it's renovated and looks nicer now, but to play in a classic ballpark like that against a classic team, yeah, I buy that.
Absolutely.
I buy it.
High on the bucket list, but I'm clearly not going to scratch it off the next 3 days.
No, you're
'Cause
here.
we're here.
Buddy. You're
we're
here.
up here in Toronto.
Yeah.
And the Jays are in LA, starting a series with the Dodgers tonight after they dropped 2 of 3 in Seattle. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota Hotline, here is ESPN MLB insider Kiley McDaniel back on Overdrive. How you doing, Kiley?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. Jays are in a bit of an interesting spot. We were talking about this last hour, where Hyunjin Ryu is likely going to be an option for them in the next week or two. And if that happens, they could be looking at a 6-man rotation where you've got 6 names of value, like 6 veteran arms who at different parts of their careers have brought a lot to the table. That said, Ryu is a complete wild card, Manoah is a complete wild card, and Kikuchi is holding on basically on 2 wheels. So a 6-man rotation, what is it worth in your opinion, Kiley, if maybe you can only truly trust 3 of those arms right now?
Well, I think the workload spread across 6 guys is obviously the right answer. The question would be, like, how do you implement that? Do you put one guy in the bullpen, and whenever somebody gets bounced in the second inning, he comes in? But then what if they don't? He just sits in the bullpen for a week. Or do you spread everyone out, mess with, Gausman and Barrios' normal rest and, spread them out a day? Is everybody getting close to where, in the playoffs, they might be running out of gas? So, like, do we want to start, skipping days here and there, as a lot of teams will do anyway? I tend to think just going 6-man, guys can maybe go a little deeper in the game than normal, and hopefully that saves the bullpen a bit, that saves the starters a bit. I think that's probably the way to do it. And in reality, like, when you have 6 starters, you probably only have 5 because, like, one of them's always going to have 3 bad starts in a row or be hurt or, whatever's going to be happening. Like, usually you don't end up with too many good starting pitchers. That's usually not a problem that actually happens for more than, like, a week or two. So I think in general, if you just switch to a 6-man and just know that you might switch back to a 5-man, maybe the idea that you'll be switching quickly is a reason to not do it and just put someone in the bullpen and expect every 5 games somebody will get bombed and someone will be ready. Like, obviously, I'm having trouble walking through that thing by myself. I think that comes down to managing the egos and managing the clubhouse more than, like, what does it look like on the spreadsheet.
So if you're playing the role of Ross Atkins, and we're 8 days away from the deadline, looking at Manoah in particular, we've seen him have 3 stars now since returning from the stint down in Florida. How much faith do you have that Alek Manoah can supply quality production the rest of the way?
I'm good with it, just in the sense that how many guys look good the whole season, and then last 2 starts of the regular season, beginning of the playoffs, they're just not that good after having an entire good season. So the idea that is he as reliable as that kind of guy, I think he is. It looks like the sort of the issues and the velocity and all that kind of stuff is back in the area where it's fine, and obviously he had multiple years of doing that. So, like, I'd like to think you have enough sort of information here to say that this guy is a reasonable facsimile of what he had been in the past, and there's just, like, a little more chance that he's not that. But again, that kind of goes with everybody when you are getting into new areas of workload or you're getting to a certain age. Like, very few guys are not subject to that sort of, if when you get toward the end of the year. If anything, like, he has fewer innings than he normally has at this time.
I would say it was a bit of a shock when they decided to bring Manoah back up after a month. Like, if he stayed down a little bit longer, how much better does that progress his game, if not at all?
I don't know. He seems to me like one of those guys that makes adjustments quickly on the fly and sort of knows his body and knows how to do those sorts of things. More of a knows his body than is like, deep into the spreadsheets and is like planning out the entire bat before he gets there. So I feel like he's one of those guys you kind of got to throw him in the deep end and let him figure it out himself rather than like let him face AA hitters and get bored and do that whole thing. And I would imagine that is, whether that's the thought that Atkins and those guys are having or not. I think they have to know what kind of guy they're dealing with, which is one of those things that, working on the team side, a lot of times stuff looks good. I keep referring to like sort of the spreadsheets where you have sort of the nerds in the office, which at various points in my career, that was the role that I played. That you have an idea and then you go talk to like the manager and the GM and they're like, yeah, but that won't work for this guy. Like that, your idea is right, but it's not going to be useful in this situation. So you always have to sort of, when something goes differently than you think it will, or the plan is different than you thought it would be, you have to then go to the person and be like, well, what is something that the people in charge of this know that we don't know? And I feel like a lot of times just watching a guy on TV, you can get an idea of what kind of personality you're dealing with.
With Kiley McDaniel of ESPN, runners in scoring position has been trending in Toronto since basically day one of the season. It's infuriating how they've struggled with this. and it continued at times over the weekend. I'm curious why you think this continues to be an issue, Kyle. You mentioned how organizations work, and I'm assuming you go to the hitting coach and maybe Schneider, maybe Mattingly, maybe the players. But if you're trying to tackle what the problem is, or if you feel like there's an answer out there, why can't they find it yet?
Yeah, that's another one of those things where if you're, again, staring at, that's one of the things that when you look at any one player or any one team's stats, that's the thing that when you look at like ERA versus fielding independent pitching or some of the ERA estimators, that they predict the future better than current ERA because it strips out things like runners left on base and like random ball and play luck. Like those things tend to even out over the season. But as any sort of numbers dork would tell you, stuff evens out over the season, except for maybe one or two teams it doesn't even out, or maybe for a handful of pitchers it doesn't even out. They need basically 2 seasons for it to even out. So I would say in general, not having done a deep dive on this, I'm guessing like the coaching isn't like notably worse, that this is a little bit of like a blip and a fluke as opposed to like they are notably worse with hitters on base or with runners on base. But sometimes it doesn't, like when it says the coin flip should be starting to go in your direction, it's like, well, yeah, infinite coin flips, it'll even out. We don't know how long in the future will like qualify as infinite. It could be tomorrow or it could be next year. So it's one of those things you kind of have to weather and be able to have the mental toughness to handle, things not going your way a little more than it normally does.
What do you think of Nate Pearson getting optioned to AAA ball? Because, there's been times this year where he's been fantastic coming out of the bullpen, but the bad ones have been really bad. And he's a guy like he's not a stranger to this. He's been down before. He's been hurt. He's had to kind of remake himself. Is this something where he kind of goes down there, finds something, he comes back up, and he's that bullpen guy that you can rely on? Or what is this situation?
Yeah, guys of this sort, it is usually because just like the raw arm speed when he's healthy, the athlete, all the pieces are there when he's at his best. Everyone thought he would be Noah Syndergaard or some version of that when he got to the big leagues. And like all the broad pieces are still there. So usually when guys like this end up working out, it's just going to be a couple years in the wilderness of figuring out like a slightly different grip on a pitch that looks good to the eye but doesn't actually play well, or knowing that this pitch can only go in this location and figuring out how to consistently get it there, or a little tweak in the delivery. Like usually when you look back on guys like this that take a couple years to get their feet wet and really stick, it's usually one little thing, and obviously you never know what it is. It's just sort of like being frustrated and being on the bus in AAA or, whatever it is like sometimes these things come to you and sometimes they never come. And I'd like to believe that, Nate will be one of those guys. I hope everyone is that guy where like it comes. But it kind of has to be one of those journeys you go on yourself. Like the kid has to stick their hand on the stove one time and then they understand when you tell them to stop doing it. They kind of have to experience how wrong is to be able to find like good on their own. Mm-hmm. So I think he has like so much horsepower in his arm. It's really just a matter of like how to harness it and in what way. And he's just got to kind of tinker with that until he can figure it out completely.
With Kylie McDaniel of ESPN. So we're about 8 days away. In fact, we're exactly that from the trade deadline. And naturally, the whole world is waiting to see what's going to happen with Otani and the Angels. At this point, we don't know if he's going to get flipped. We don't really know what the Angels are thinking internally. But if it were to happen, and I think that would be a dream come true for baseball fans and certainly for sports media because it would just be an incredible story. Where does the framework begin from your standpoint for what the Angels need to demand in a trade for Otani? Like, how crazy could this deal end up looking, and how much of a haul might they get?
So I feel like I keep saying the same framework here. If you start with the nerd end of things, there is like an objective way to add up how much in cash is Otani worth. If you could auction off the rest of his season on a free agent market right now, how much would a team pay? And then how much does he get marked up because it is a singular player playoff race, and you get a head start on free agency, you might be able to convince him to stay. So you then sort of mark it up, say 50% from what it would be. That math sort of leads you to, it needs to be, say, 1 top half of the top 100 prospects and then 2 or 3 other good guys, or 2 back half of the top 100 prospects and 2 or 3 other guys. But then the part you're not adjusting to is this guy's such a singular talent. We already know he's going to get over $500 million this offseason. It might be $600 million. Is that such a unique opportunity in the same way that like Juan Soto was a unique opportunity that you kind of push the math to the side and you throw in the extra player you probably should throw in to get it done? And so we did this at ESPN.com and had a bunch of different writers represent teams, and Jeff Passan was the Angels GM, Perry Manassian. And I had the Mariners and the Yankees, and I basically proposed that basic number of, sort of prospect value, rounded up for how good and singular he is, and then even add a little bit like an extra sweetener on top because it's a unique situation. And neither of my proposals on behalf of Seattle and the Yankees really even got close. There were a couple other teams that just threw in like an extra guy or two, which who knows if that will reflect what big league GMs do or not. But that's all to explain that normally the math in this sort of situation, like when Manny Machado was traded as a rental, it was like, oh, you get one back end of the top 100 guy and then 2 or 3 other guys. That doesn't really apply anymore because all you need is one crazy owner or crazy GM that says, yeah, just get him. I don't care. Like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have this guy on my team and maybe keep him going forward because he's a guy that isn't just going to go to the highest bidder necessarily. I mean, there's other things that matter to him. So there is the opportunity here, similar to Juan Soto, for an irrational offer. And so you kind of have to entertain it as it'll be one of the biggest trade packages you've ever seen, similar to the Juan Soto thing, but it could be even more because the room for being irrational has now been opened up. And so who knows, given how free agency has beat our expectations the last few years, this is a unique enough situation. They might beat our expectations again with whatever happens here. All that said, I don't think he gets traded, but it's like 25-30% chance he gets traded. It's not zero.
Yeah, I'm curious. You keep talking about these different statistics and the numbers, and obviously you're well versed in them. You've been living them. How many front offices around the league, to your knowledge, operate that way? In other words, it's basically a built-in system, and there's no human element to what they're going to do and how they possibly draw out of the lines.
I would say all 30 teams have somebody representing that point of view. I would say 20 to 25 of them, that guy is like, I guess guy or gal, there's a couple women that are in that area as well, that are in the room, the like 4 to 5 people that make the decision. Maybe they're the 4th or 5th person whose opinion doesn't really matter. They're just there to present the information. And then I'd say a good 15 or 20 teams, their point of view is sort of adopted by the GM and sort of drives the bus. And so you would need like a president or owner or GM to have like no, this is the one time in my career we're going to do this. So we'll start from what the analytics people say, and then we'll round up from there. Like I said, I think this is a situation where those sorts of things, the sort of gut feel, the guys that own the team have opinions on this sort of thing. So I think this is one of the rare opportunities where what the computer says the value is. If we're talking about like a 1-year, $10 million deal free agent, all 30 teams may be like within 5% of the same offer because they're all doing the same thing. This is one of those outlier situations where the numbers that get spit out by the computer are going to be a little bit different, and the personalities involved, both of the player, the agent, the team trading him, the owner trading for him, all those different people, they're going to move those opinions all over the board. So I think while baseball has become a little too homogenous when it comes to everyone making decisions the same way, this is one of those things, again, similar to the Juan Soto deal, similar to like some of the top of the free agent, like the Carlos Correa deals where Steve Cohen got involved. Like you're kind of dealing with some of those variables you can't predict. And so, again, I don't think anything's going to happen, but if there is a trade, I bet it's going to be because some team offered a doesn't make sense on paper kind of offer, but probably does make sense when like a human looks at it and is like, oh yeah, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. They might do this sort of thing. Well, so it's like an opportunity for humans to be humans, really.
Yeah, which would be great.
Yeah, and
I think that's necessary in sports.
Well, and you talk about that once in a lifetime opportunity. We're in Toronto, so automatically when a superstar player becomes somewhat available, we think, well, the Jays got to be in because they're a team that's in that win now mode. This is their window. Like when you evaluate what they have to offer, could the Jays even enter that arena?
Yeah, I think if you start with the top 2 guys, Ricky Tiedemann or Elvis Martinez, I think that gets you in the bidding. If you do those 2 guys and then maybe 2 more in like the 6 to 12 range in the system, sort of to the taste. Like I think the Angels would like to go pitching, so maybe go Roberts or Zulueta or Hayden Junger. Like maybe toss those 2 of those 3 guys in with Martinez and Tiedemann, which now you're talking about like 4 of your top 8 prospects. Like that's pretty steep. But like the pieces technically exist to have the best offer, but it's going to be almost the entire system, which is also where like San Diego is now. Like they can probably leave out 1 or 2 of their top guys and then line up all the rest of them. And then teams like say the Dodgers or like Baltimore could just sort of cherry pick like one guy from that tier, one guy from that tier, and then not touch, half of their top 10 basically. Like that's sort of like the margin for error gets to be close to 0. And if you don't think you're going to sign Otani to clear out the top half of your system, to then have him for one stretch run, like you got to be real confident this is going to put you over the top, give you a real chance to re-sign him. You've got the money to make a real offer, that he likes Toronto. Like you got to have good feelings about all that stuff because like there's a chance that like one of those 2 guys becomes 6.5 years of like perennial all-star, getting MVP votes. Like that's the kind of guys we're talking about that have a real chance to be that kind of guy. And then feel real bad for the next 6.5 years that your system doesn't have anything because you gave that guy away for just a somewhat impulsive decision.
Well, we got 8 days to figure that out. We'll see what comes of it. He is Kylie McDaniel of ESPN. Really appreciate you taking time for us. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, and we'll be live on ESPN for the 2 hours leading into the trade deadline. So if something happens and there's prospects, I'll be the guy yapping about what the prospects are.
Perfect. Can't wait. We'll catch you then. Thank you, Kylie. Kylie McDaniel of ESPN. Joining us on Maple Toyota Hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota, and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory. Arriving daily, it's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. He's obviously, heavily analytically driven. The baseball world, I think, has been somewhat paralyzed by that line of thinking. And I understand why they do it, because it's a smart way of operating your business. But it also feels like a crutch. Like it feels like it's a way for the GM to basically say, well, what do you want me to do? The computer said, don't do that, right? And that to me is a detriment to your sport and detriment to your business if there's an understanding, and I think we all have it, and it's leaked into the clubhouse and the dugout during games. I think most people concede, most managers around baseball are making pitching changes based on what the computer upstairs told them to, right? And making lineup changes and in-game decisions based on what the analytics have told them well before first pitch. But it would appear to me as if there's an avenue available for a crazy GM and a crazy owner
to link up. Rogue. If you go rogue,
say, you know what, we don't
Otani.
care about your system. We're going to do what we're going to do. We're going to have some life.
But he did say, I guess you say you got to go rogue and you got to make a out-of-this-world pitch to try and get this guy. You also, one of the prerequisites is going to be your owner has to have deep, deep pockets. And you got to be somewhat of a desirable destination to maybe re-sign the guy, right? Which we don't really know what that is for Otani. But I agree with you about the analytics thing. It's got to be one of those things where the analytics tell you the story of what you're actually seeing in whatever sport it is, baseball, hockey, whatever. Like, that's just kind of confirming what your eyes see. If you're just stuck in the computer screen saying, well, it was 0.5 this, and it's like you're missing it. You don't have a pulse on the game anymore. Like, it needs to be a little bit of both. Eyes first, and then the analytics will tell you what you're seeing.
Right. And even the idea of scouting players and just accepting the deal because of where they happen to land on the list, right? Well, he's a top 50 prospect according to. So, but what if you don't like that guy?
But isn't that subjective?
Yeah, exactly. It is. And and you're also relying on other people to determine that ranking in that list. And what if there's a prospect who's the 8th best prospect on that ranking, but that's the guy you really believe in? Like, that's the guy you like.
There's just something
you still
about
make the
him.
move, or is it like, well, the computer's telling me I shouldn't do that, so,
It's really strange, man, because even the NHL draft process, all 32 teams all have different lists. Like, once you get outside the top 5, and maybe even in the top 5, it's different. But it varies so much, man. It's so subjective. And they're all talented scouts. They all got the same analytics. They're all watching the same players, but they have different interpretations of it.
Yeah.
And it's got to be the same with baseball.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And listen, your owner is the one that's going to establish your philosophy, your culture, your ability for freedom, like how far the boundaries go in terms of what you can work and how you can operate. And I look at a guy like Anthopoulos, who probably still doesn't get enough love around baseball. Like, look at the Braves. Again, ever since he got there, and they were a good team before that, like an up-and-coming team, but they've won a World Series. They chased down the Mets last year in almost historic fashion, and this year they're running away with the NL East. And he's locked up all these guys.
That's the key. That's where I was going with it. Like, he locked up all his guys.
But that takes stones.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think a computer would say commit to this many players. Like, the computer would probably pump out that at some point one of these guys are going to blow up in your face. And Anthopoulos, I think, still said, I'm doing it. Like, these are the players I believe in. These are the players I'm going to attack in terms of trading for them. Because I guess that's what I'm getting to. Like, at some point, a human has to make the determination that's the guy I want.
You got the human,
that's the guy I like.
The human element behind it tells you how you can be bold. Right. And he was bold here in Toronto when he went out and he got David Price and Tulowitzki and he made all those moves. That was bold, man. Where the team was, it was like, no, we're making a run for this where we are right now. And it was great. And the city loved it. Everyone got behind it. But I'm with you on Anthopoulos and locking those guys up because you see it so many times. You want to like give guys these rinky-dink contracts and hold them. Guess what? They have a couple big years on a bridge deal. You're going to pay for it after.
You are going
to pay for it.
It's a gamble both ways.
Yeah.
Right? If you give a guy long-term, lots of like security, lots of finances, lock up a certain amount of your budget, and then he stinks or he's got a bad attitude or his knee blows out, that happens. But the reverse is if you let him continue to just play and play and play, he may really burn you down the road.
That just happened.
Because you can't afford him.
With Seattle, the Kraken, Vince Dunn. They bridged him.
And now they pay him.
And he had couple monster years.
Yep.
And there you go. Now you got to pay him north of 7, just under 8.
Yeah, 7.75, I think, on a 4-year deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vinny Dunn's a pretty happy guy.
You probably could have got him instead of bridging him. You probably could have told him at the time, we're going to give you 5.5 or something like that. But now you gotta dish it out, and there you go. That's how you get into that cap situation. Like they're still in a good cap situation because they were starting fresh and they haven't made mistakes. But that's the player that just outplayed the bridge deal, and now you got to pay him.
Yep, that's right. And listen, if you have some flexibility, you can maybe afford to do that. It's the teams that don't. That
you know who's going to be coming up soon with that is that Elias Pettersson in Vancouver.
Yes.
He's going to get paid.
He's going to get some money.
He's so good, and he's going to get paid, and he deserves to.
Yeah, right. Like you look at the season he just had. He had a phenomenal season.
Because he's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Like he had a couple of down years. Like the COVID years were pretty quiet for him based on expectations.
For sure, yeah.
Based on expectations.
That first year he came in, he was a rock
so good
star.
as a rookie, and everyone fell in love with the way he played, and like he's got moxie on the ice. Like he's a ticket seller. He's a guy. If Pettersson was in town, it's like I got to go see this kid play, and he returned to that form this year. It was phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's what being healthy and being a superstar does for you, man.
Yep.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get into the Open Championship. Brian Harman running away with it, and the Ryder Cup team. Justin Thomas. I said about a month ago on this show, I got into a big battle with O. Said, I don't think he's guaranteed to make the team. In fact, I said, based on the way he was playing, he should not be on the team. O thought that was incredulous. I'm not sure this guy's making the Ryder Cup team. I'm not sure the way he's playing right now that's going to fly. So we'll get into that and more still to come. Back into the Jays with Scott Mitchell as they head into L.A. Something to chew on. Brought to you by Boston Pizza still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Scott Mitchell still to come. Jays Dodgers tonight. We'll get back into that messy scene on Friday night. Kylian Mbappe being offered $776 million to play in Saudi Arabia. And maybe Brian Harman is a guy that Live Golf is going to start kicking tires on.
Think they missed the boat on him?
Maybe they missed the boat on Harman. Maybe Liv is going to have to look back on that and say, we needed Harman. We got to have some Harman. I'm taking heat online, too, for suggesting, I think just being honest, that no one's going to buy the Harman putter.
Dude, I think
you say you believe someone would go into a golf store and buy the Harman putter.
Yeah, I think some guy gets off the 18th. He stunk. He 3-putted 9 times, goes to the putting green, stinks again. He's like, I just got to go get
Got to have the Harman. Got to have the Harman.
The Harman or the Wyndham Clark, Ricky Fowler,
possibly
the jailbird.
All right, here's Daniel Rapaport of Barstool and the co-host of the Full Swing podcast. Which one are you buying, Daniel? Do you think people would walk into a golf store and say, I got to have the Harman putter based on what he did this week? Okay. Solid answer.
He hates the putter.
Hates the putter.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get him back. I don't know what's up with that.
I'm just, listen.
That putter is so annoying, he hung up the phone.
Did you see? And also, he was walking with it. Harman was walking with the putter to go like sign his scorecard. Like it was weird the way he was holding on to this thing.
You would too, though, if it was red hot.
Oh, yeah.
Like I will say that. If I had a putter that was red hot, I would definitely keep that in possession at all times.
You would tell whoever you're riding the cart with, like, don't even look at that thing. Right?
I ride solo. Solo carts specifically so no one's even close to the putter that happened to be working for me.
Yeah.
All right, we got Daniel Rapaport back of Barstool and the Full Swing podcast. We asked this question, Daniel. We'll ask it again. I don't know if you heard it. Do you think that Harman old school TaylorMade putter could make a comeback, and guys like you and I would buy that because of what he just did?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think if a putter was good enough to sort of write all of our collective putting wrongs, this game would be a lot easier. So I think it was more than the putter. I think it was the guy using it. And I think if you had a thing that large in your golf bag, there probably wouldn't be that much room for the other clubs. So you don't have a big staff bag like he has.
Yeah,
so
that's true. That's valid. I'll give him credit. I mean, the guy put on an absolute clinic, and he was getting heckled. He had everyone rooting against him. You've been on the grounds, watching a lot of golf tournaments over the years. Have you seen anything like that where a clear-cut leader after 36 had the amount of fans rooting against him the way he had to endure this weekend at Royal Liverpool?
Definitely not in the Open. American fans can be a little bit rowdy at times. I think that's no secret. When there's an American guy in contention and someone else is leading, they can do the USA chants, which is kind of a little bit, beneath the belt, whatever you might want to say. But no, I hadn't seen it. But I think it worked in his favor, to be honest with you. I think he's the kind of guy where, look, he's 5'7" on a good day, right? He's playing against guys who are a lot bigger than him, who hit it a lot farther than him. And I think just naturally being that guy in professional golf, you get a little bit of that chip on your shoulder of, these people think I'm small, these people think I can't do it. And you take motivation from that. And I think if you listen to what he had to say after he won, which was, you heard a couple guys say, Harman, you don't have the stones to do this, and he feels like that kind of pushed him forward. I actually think it helps. So it's understandable, right? I mean, there were other big names, especially European guys who were up by the lead for, the whole weekend, really, Rory and Fleetwood and Rahm. The crowds wanted them to win as badly as they could, but I think that the sort of playing the villain role worked in Harman's favor.
What was it specifically about the putting for him? Like, it had to be more than just the guy's putter got hot and he couldn't miss. Like, he's 58 from 59 within 10 feet. And it seemed like there was a lot of talk over the weekend, too, about he just made some adjustment or he was seeing something different. What is it about that putting for him this weekend?
His speed was perfect. It felt like every putt, even if it didn't go in, which, like you said, almost all of them did, was a tap in. He didn't have a single free putt for the whole week. So with the different conditions, with kind of slower greens, that's difficult to do. He had the speed all week, and he made, I think it was 13 of 14 of putts between 5 and 10 feet. And that's kind of the money number. The number that's kind of surfacing more is the one that you mentioned, which is like 59 or 59 or whatever it was. A lot of those are tap-ins. What's more impressive is that's the money range. Right? You got to make those sort of 5 to 10 footers to keep momentum in rounds. You make them for par. You make them for birdie. And he was able to do that. Also, I think he only made 6 bogeys all week, and he birdied the next hole 4 times. So he just didn't really – he got off to those 2 poor starts on Saturday and Sunday, but the putter is the great equalizer. And, for him to be able to make those birdie putts oftentimes on the very next hole after stumbling just righted the ship. It gave him that belief that you can do it. Golf is a lot easier when you're making putts. You look at the other guys who were in contention, Tommy and Rory and Cameron Young come to mind. They're hitting it better, if not better than just as good as Brian Harman, but he gained 11 shots on the rest of the field with his putting. So over the course of a season, ball striking is more important. It's more indicative of who's the best player. But for 1 week, give me the hot putter. And Harman was absolutely on fire.
We're chatting with Dan Rapaport of Barstool and the Foreplay podcast. So another year goes by. The 4 majors are finished. Rory doesn't get his hands on any of them. It'll be a decade the next time he tees it at Augusta since his last major win. Yet he's won multiple times. He's made a fortune. He's way up there in the FedEx points. How do you think we'll look back on 2023 for Rory McIlroy?
Unfortunately, there's only one stat that matters with Rory, and we know what that stat is, and it's majors, and it's not fair. But if you look at the last couple of years in golf, kind of calling this a war of the tours now, one of the big beneficiaries is the majors, and they stand alone in our game as the 4 tournaments that, if you're that level, if you're a Rory McIlroy, if you're a Scotty Scheffler even, that's what your career is going to be measured by. So if we look at last year, Rory won a bunch of times. He got back to number 1 in the world. He won the FedEx Cup. He won $1 gazillion. You don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it sounds a little bit overly harsh, but it just doesn't really matter that much when you look back at a player like that. You're always going to be measured by how you do in the four, and it's not fair because he's done everything he could possibly do. I think he's been in the top 10 in 7 of the last 8 majors, and he's had 20 top 10s since his last major win, which is he's done everything but win a major in the last 10 years. He's won the FedEx Cup 3 times. He's won the Players' Championship. He's won a bunch of times and $1 gazillion. But again, he's just not going to be able to escape that narrative, which is probably some of his own doing. You win 4 by the time you're 25 years old, and you set these expectations that are super high, and he just hasn't been able to deliver. So, he himself, I think it's important, doesn't seem to feel that way. Whether he's being honest or not. He said after the round that, I don't look at it as a 10-year major drought. I look at it as I have a chance to win a 4th FedEx Cup. I've got a chance to win, a 5th Ryder Cup. So he's focusing on the positive, which is what he has to do. But for the rest of us who talk about this for a living, nothing's really going to change in the narrative until he does it. And he will do it, but until he does, and it'll be sweet when he does, that's going to continue to be what people remember is the tournaments he hasn't won.
Is that what it is with him? You think the narrative just keeps putting more and more pressure on him? Like, you look at the way last year went. He handled himself like he had a lot to deal with the live thing, and he was like a spokesperson for the tour. And I can understand how that can wear on you. And then leading into this year, like that can still be weighing on him. But at some point, it's got to be one of those things where the guy just kind of breaks free from that pressure. But for now, do you think there's just a little too much pressure on him to just win the majors, and then when they come around, it's like he can feel that all week?
I think he's probably felt that way, and so he's tried to change his approach a little bit. He didn't do a press conference for this one. He didn't do a press conference for the U.S. Open. I think he's tried basically everything. I think he's tried come in super early and play a bunch of rounds before, get to Augusta on Saturday before, and play a bunch of rounds. I think he's done the opposite, where you kind of want to treat it like it's just another tournament. I just think it's a small sample size. They're hard to win. Like, there's only 4 of them per year, and his putter has gone cold in the wrong moments, whether that's a function of it being a major championship or not. I mean, he won the week before, so it's hard. It's very, you think that 20 top 10s, it's hard to imagine that not one of those has stumbled into a victory almost by accident, but it's just a cruel game. It's just hard. There's there's a Bryan Harman out there every week who you're not thinking about is capable of putting on a historic performance. Harder to win golf tournaments than ever. There's more great players than ever before who are capable of doing it, and you only get 4 of them per year.
Well, it's a cruel game right now for Justin Thomas, and the Ryder Cup is right around the corner. If you're playing the role of Zach Johnson, would you put Justin Thomas on your Ryder Cup team?
I think if you're Zach Johnson, you're the biggest fan ever of Justin Thomas these next couple of weeks, because he wants to pick him. He definitely wants to pick him. He's Justin Thomas. I believe he's 6-2-1 in his 2 Ryder Cup starts, which is the best mark ever by someone who's played at least 2 Ryder Cups on the American side. He was the only guy really who played well at all in Paris when the U.S. got thumped last time they were in Europe, and he's the heart and soul of that group. He's best friends with Jordan Spieth and with Ricky Fowler, and him and Cantlay and Schauffele. These guys have played together in really the last 4 team competitions. That kind of core of Americans, he is the most fiery of the bunch. And Zach Johnson wants to pick him. Now, JT, there's no person who could argue with a straight face that his play deserves it this year. He shot 82 at the Open. He shot 81 at the U.S. Open. As of right now, he's not even going to make the FedEx Cup playoffs, which is why he's playing this week. He's playing the 3M Open. He might play next week in the Wyndham Championship, tournaments he would never play before, but he's trying his best to show a little bit of form to say to Zach Johnson that, hey, I can do this. And it should be noted that playing on the PGA Tour is different than playing in the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup is so much more of an emotional endeavor. Match play golf is very different, especially on the road, and JT's proven he can handle that. So Zach Johnson is going to pick him, I think, either way. I just think that he's not going to have the stones to not pick him. But I think the decision becomes much, much easier if JT, even not to win the tournament, but just, finishing the top 10, the top 15, just show that, all right, my game might not be good, but it's not as bad as those couple rounds show.
Well, we'll see. The 3M, JT. We'll We'll see what comes of it. Really appreciate you finding time for us, Daniel. We love having you on. Thank you for doing this.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Daniel Rapaport of the Foreplay podcast. And
JT's got to win that.
JT's got to get some cooking, man. Like, because that can go the opposite way. You go to the 3M where it's a weak field. If you blow up and you're brutal,
no kidding.
Then you're really putting a spotlight on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a tough, cruel game, man.
The 3M was last year where Tony Finau started putting it together, right? Like, he caught fire there, and he had a great finish to the season.
Right.
I hope that's the case for JT. He's a great golfer. He's a guy like you want to see in contention. He's entertaining, all that kind of stuff. It's better when he's playing good golf.
Yes, for sure. But at this point, it is ugly. It is ugly for him. And it's interesting where the golf world is at, though, now, where he is such a star, even though he's playing as poorly as he is. And let's say it gets worse. Next year, he'll still be in all those exempt fields.
Right, yeah.
Even though I don't believe he's won this year on tour. Like, he's dropped out of the top 20 now. FedEx, he's not even in the top 75.
Yeah.
Like, this was a part of that protection, I think, for the Stars, was that they sell the tickets. They've put a lot into it. So if they're playing well, they think they deserve more money. But the flip side of that is, even if we're playing poorly, we believe we should be there.
Sure,
because of who we are.
See JT.
Right.
People want to see him play, man.
But it's interesting how, again, a year ago it was, the PGA Tour is a grind. You got to prove who you are week in, week out. And now it's like, hey, if you're a big enough name, man, you're getting in.
Business,
you're getting in there because we love you. Not based on merit.
You talk about business all the time and business decisions and good ones, bad ones. That's one of those ones where people, like, you've been at a golf tournament, you kind of lose track of the leaderboard sometimes. You just want to see who do you like, and you want to go see them play. Like, that's the when you're on the property kind of feel.
Yes. On this date 40 years ago, there was an absolutely insane scene that broke out at Yankee Stadium. We'll tell you about that next. All right, Scott Mitchell at 6:30. Chris Whittingham will join us. Inter Miami play-by-play voice. Get his take on what that scene was like on Friday night. LeBron was there. Kardashians were there. Serena Williams was there.
Beckham was there.
Now, Beckham's part owner, right?
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's part owner of that team,
okay.
I believe. So
there we go.
But he was jacked, clearly. He had the suit rocking, too, man. A suit in July in Miami, you got to have like a 3% body fat.
That guy's always, like, he's got the best style. No?
Yeah. Yeah, and he's still, like, shredded. He's still in probably game shape.
Yeah.
You put me in a suit in South Beach in July, it will disintegrate. That thing will disappear over time.
Yeah. It'll literally start to shrink in real time.
Yeah. Like, it's gone. It will not
Body heat
exist.
plus moisture equals no more suit.
not a good combination. No. Right. No. Those are not the numbers that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So on this day in 1983, George Brett went crazy at Yankee Stadium when, after he hit a big homer, the Yankees called him on too much pine tar on his bat, and the ump actually threw him out. And his that's got to be the most famous player snap show reaction in pro sports history. Him coming bombing out of Yankee Stadium dugout because he's sitting down like he's cool, man. He's like, yeah, go ahead, test that. I don't care. I'm George Brett. I'm a Hall of Famer. Do you know how many hits I have? Do you know how famous I am? And he clearly, based on his reaction, he did not think they were calling it. But there had to be a part of him, like, to have a reaction like that, there had to be a part of him that thought, go for it. Because you will not believe what you're going to see out of me.
Yeah.
Like, I almost want you to call me on that pine tar because I'm going to come out of here and I am swinging.
We need more of this.
Reaction is wild. You don't find that on a computer.
Well, it's also interesting because everyone in that Royals dugout is sitting there. It's like everyone's just in the back of the dugout. Now, it's very different, right? Like, some guys are hanging over the edge. There's like a group on the one end. It's not like that. Like, everyone's just single file, and he booked it.
There's no bar. There's nothing blocking the dugout. Yeah. There's just steps down to the dugout. And, like, he comes out, his arms are flailing. And I think he wanted to kill the ump, but he must have been thinking, I want to kill the Yankees too. Like, I want to kill the manager. Like, how dare you call that on me? I'm George Brett.
Yeah. It would have been great if he went right up to the ump and just suplexed him. Yeah. Just or went for the spear tackle.
Well, and he's got the chew in his mouth too. Like, he's got a Pat Borders chew.
He's got to be careful he doesn't swallow the chew while he's going nuts.
Maybe he's got pine tar in.
Yeah.
chew with a little splash of pine tar.
You're right. There's no way he was expecting them to come up with anything there.
No.
He thought it was just going to be a nothing burger. There's no way you react like that.
Exactly. Like, because if you're stewing, you're on the top step anyway.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You're like, you're sending the warning shot. You're like, don't think about it. Don't even think about it. Or then you're like, you're already thinking, all right, they kind of got me. Like, I know I did it, right?
We need someone else to bring that type of heat at some point.
Yeah.
I need to see another George Brett situation. It's been 40 years, right? Because you see pitchers get called on it, like too much pine tar. We just saw it with Domingo Germán, but he just took it and said, "Fine, I'm out of here." Like, he didn't stop. He didn't pull a George Brett.
He probably knew.
Yeah,
I miss the days of Gibby walking out to the mound.
Yes,
Gibby was really good at that.
He loved the slow gait. Like, he would just be cruising. Yeah, he was in slow-mo.
Well, it was great because it was a slow gait, and then it was like a little bit of a conversation that led to him getting tossed, and then it was irate.
Mm-hmm.
Completely irate.
Oh, yeah. Those guys are the best.
Awesome.
Just nice, cool, calm, and collected. Throw me out, and now I'm going to go nuts.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
All right, final hour coming up. Back into the Messi effect, what we saw to him on Friday night. Back into the Leafs goaltending situation now that we know the price for Ilya Samsonov and Jays Dodgers tonight. We'll tee it up with Scott Mitchell. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050, soon to be up on TSN 2.